What if I told you that just 15 minutes a day could completely change your life? I know it sounds like one of those overused cliches, but stay with me. Because what we're about to explore isn't a hack or a shortcut or a feel-good quote to post on your fridge. It's a blueprint, a practical, battle-tested approach to building a life of success, fulfillment, and clarity, one action at a time. See, most people want a better life, but wanting isn't enough. Desire without discipline is like a car without wheels. It might look sleek, but it isn't going anywhere. Jim Rohn, one of the greatest thinkers in personal development, understood this deeply. He didn't shout, he didn't preach. He spoke with quiet conviction because he lived it. His philosophy: success is nothing more than a few simple disciplines practiced every day. Failure, on the other hand, is simply a few errors in judgment repeated over time. Think about that. The difference between thriving and surviving isn't usually some dramatic overnight change. It's the quiet stuff. The morning decision to read instead of scroll. The moment you choose a task over a distraction. The small promise you keep to yourself when no one's watching. This isn't about motivation that fades after a few hours. This is about building something deeper, momentum. And momentum, as you'll soon see, starts with daily action. So today, we're not just going to talk about what Jim Rohn taught, we're going to live it. We're diving into 7 principles, 7 pillars, if you will, that spiral around one central idea: the discipline of daily action. We'll look at each from different angles, through stories, science, personal moments, even guided exercises you can do as you listen. By the end, you won't just understand these principles, you'll feel them, you'll know how to use them. Let's begin where all momentum starts, with the invisible engine of discipline. Discipline doesn't shout, it doesn't knock on your door and beg you to use it. Discipline whispers. It's the quiet nudge to get out of bed when it's easier to stay under the covers. It's the decision to write one sentence even when you don't feel inspired. It's choosing water over soda, saving instead of spending, planning instead of drifting. And here's the truth. No one will give you a trophy for it, but it compounds. Just like interest on an investment, the rewards of discipline grow in silence until one day, boom, everyone asks you how you did it. When Jim Rohn was 25, he was broke, behind on his bills, and working a job with no future. Then he met a mentor, Earl Schoaf, who asked him a question that changed his life. If you keep living like this, where will you be in 5 years? It wasn't an insult, it was a mirror. And Rohn didn't like what he saw, so he began changing bit by bit. He didn't wait for New Year's. He didn't wait for motivation. He started where he was with what he had: a journal, a plan, a single book. That's where the daily discipline began. And from that, everything changed. Now let's make it personal. I want you to pause, just mentally, and think of one small action that you've been avoiding. Something you know would help your future self. Maybe it's starting a journal. Maybe it's going for a short walk. Maybe it's making that one uncomfortable phone call. Got it? Now ask yourself, what would happen if I did that action every day for the next 30 days? Not the big dramatic version, just the small, consistent one. Because momentum doesn't need a leap, it needs a nudge, one that repeats. Here's your first practice. Design your 15-minute daily win. Pick one meaningful action that takes no more than 15 minutes, something that aligns with the life you want to build. Set a timer, do it once a day, and track it, not for perfection, but for consistency. Because what gets tracked gets traction, and what gets traction creates transformation. Now let's talk about the enemy of momentum: procrastination. We all know the feeling. You tell yourself you'll start in 5 minutes, then 20, then tomorrow. Before you know it, a week's gone by, and the thing that once felt manageable now feels like a mountain. But what if procrastination isn't laziness? What if it's fear in disguise? Fear of failure, fear of success, fear of not being good enough. These are the quiet saboteurs, and the longer we wait, the louder they get. Jim Rohn used to say, "The pain of discipline weighs ounces. The pain of regret weighs tons." Think about that. The tiny discomfort of starting now will always be lighter than the crushing weight of what could have been. And science backs this up. Researchers have found that when we procrastinate, the brain activates the limbic system, the emotional part that seeks comfort. But when we take action, even a tiny one, we shift control to the prefrontal cortex, the rational decision-making part of the brain. Action literally changes how we think. So here's your second practice. I call it the 5-minute now list. Right now, write down 3 small tasks you've been putting off. Just 3. Choose one. Set a 5-minute timer. Start. Even if you don't finish, you've broken the cycle. You've taken back control. Because here's the truth. Action kills anxiety. Movement creates motivation. And momentum starts with now. Now that we've broken through the walls of procrastination and stepped into motion, it's time to talk about where we're heading. Because movement without direction is just chaos. That's where goals come in. Jim Rohn was famous for saying, "If you don't design your own life plan, chances are you'll fall into someone else's." And guess what they have planned for you? Not much. That hits hard, doesn't it? Most people don't fail because they lack talent. They fail because they never define what success looks like for them. They wake up, go through the motions, react to what life throws at them, and then wonder why they feel empty at the end of the week. But when you set clear goals, everything changes. Your mind starts filtering opportunities based on what matters. Your actions become intentional. You stop chasing everything and start building something. Let me tell you a story. A few years ago, I met someone who had drifted for most of their adult life. Talented, smart, full of potential, but always scattered. One day they sat down and wrote one sentence. "In 3 years, I want to have the freedom to work from anywhere." That sentence became a filter. Every decision, every job, every habit, they all had to answer one question. Does this get me closer? In less than 2 years, they were living the dream. Not because they had a master plan, but because they had a clear target. And with every day, they aligned their actions with that vision. So now, it's your turn. Here's your third practice. Craft your 3-level goal map. Level 1, the micro goal. What's one thing you can achieve in the next 30 days that moves you forward? Something measurable, something meaningful. Level 2, the mid goal. Where do you want to be in 1 year? What skill, habit, or milestone will make a real difference in your life? Level 3, the macro vision. Think 5 years ahead. What kind of person do you want to become? What would your ideal day look like? Write these down, speak them out loud, review them weekly, because goals aren't just about achievement, they're about identity. They remind you of who you're becoming. And here's the kicker. When you link those goals to daily action, you turn a distant dream into a lived reality. But let's pause for a moment, because goals, discipline, and momentum all sound good until life throws a curveball, until you get tired, until someone lets you down, until you fall off track. That's when the next pillar kicks in, radical ownership. Jim Rohn didn't sugarcoat it. He said, "You must take personal responsibility. You cannot change the circumstances, the seasons, or the wind, but you can change yourself." Read that again. You can't control the wind, but you can adjust your sails. Most people spend their lives blaming the government, their boss, their parents, their past. And sure, maybe those things aren't fair, but blaming them won't change your future. Ownership isn't about blame, it's about power. It's standing in front of the mirror and saying, "This is my life. I am responsible for the results. No excuses." I'll be honest with you, this one hit me hard. I used to point fingers every time something went wrong. It was easier than admitting I had let myself drift. But the moment I took full ownership, real ownership, everything changed. I stopped waiting for others to save me. I started saving myself. So here's your fourth practice, the ownership journal. At the end of each day, ask yourself 3 questions. 1. What did I do today that moved me forward? 2. What excuse did I use today, and how can I take responsibility instead? 3. What's one decision I can own tomorrow? Write your answers down. Not for perfection, for awareness. Because awareness creates clarity, and clarity creates change. When you start seeing your life as your project, something you're building, designing, shaping, you stop settling. You start leading, and that's when real success begins. Now let's talk about your mind, Because even with the best goals, the strongest discipline, and the deepest sense of responsibility, you won't go far if your mindset stays small. Jim Rohn called it self-education. He said, "Formal education will make you a living. Self-education will make you a fortune." In other words, don't wait for permission to grow. Become a student of life. Read, listen, ask questions, challenge your assumptions, learn something new every single day. We live in a time when the world is changing faster than ever. Skills expire, industries evolve, and if you're not learning, you're falling behind. But here's the beautiful part. Learning isn't about becoming perfect. It's about becoming possible. Every new idea you explore, every perspective you open yourself to, adds another tool to your toolbox, another way to solve problems, another reason to believe in yourself, and the brain is on your side. Neuroscience shows us that our brains are incredibly plastic, meaning they can change and rewire with new information, even in adulthood. Every time you learn, you literally reshape your brain. That's not just inspiring, that's empowering. So here's your fifth practice, the 7-Say-7 Learning Challenge. For the next 7 days, spend at least 7 minutes a day learning something new, a podcast, a book, an article, a conversation with someone smarter than you. Just 7 minutes. Set a timer. Make it count. Because growth doesn't require hours. It requires intention. And the more you learn, the more you earn. Internally, emotionally, and eventually, financially. All right? Take a breath. We've covered 5 pillars so far. And you're doing great. But here's where it gets even more real. Because no matter how strong you are, you're not meant to do this alone. Because here's the truth. Your environment is shaping you, whether you realize it or not. Jim Rohn said it best. You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Now pause and think about that for a second. Who are your 5? Not just the people you hang out with in person, but also the voices you listen to, the content you consume, the energy you surround yourself with. Every one of those people is either lifting you higher or pulling you down. There's no neutral in influence. I had a friend who was trying to change his life. New habits, new mindset, new goals. But every time we met, he'd complain about how hard it was to stay motivated. After a few conversations, we uncovered something simple but powerful. He was still spending hours a day with people who didn't believe in change. Friends who mocked personal development, laughed at goals, and pulled him back into old habits. He wasn't weak. He was outnumbered. So he made a shift. He didn't cut people out cruelly. He just started leaning into new voices, podcasts, books, local meetups, mentors. Slowly his circle changed, and so did his life. Because energy is contagious, and if you want to rise, you need to be around people who make rising feel normal. Here's your 6th practice, the circle audit upgrade. Write down the 5 people or voices you spend the most time with. Ask yourself, do they challenge me? Do they support my growth? Do they model the kind of life I want? If not, don't panic. Just begin to upgrade your exposure. Find one new person, online or offline, who inspires you. Engage with their ideas daily. Let that influence begin to reshape your average. You don't need to abandon your old world completely, but you do need to build a new one strong enough to pull you forward. All right, so we've built discipline, we've defeated procrastination, we've set goals, taken ownership, invested in learning, and curated our circle. That's already a powerful life shift. But there's one final piece of the spiral, one most people overlook: celebrating the small wins. We live in a culture obsessed with big results, 6-figure launches, viral posts, dream jobs. And while those are great, they can make us blind to the daily victories that build real change. Jim Rohn said, "Success is nothing more than a few simple disciplines practiced every day." But he didn't stop there. He also reminded us to acknowledge those disciplines, to mark them, to celebrate them. Because celebration isn't just about pride, it's about reinforcement. Every time you recognize a win, no matter how small, you tell your brain, "This matters. Do more of this." That's how habits stick. That's how confidence grows. I remember when I first started journaling daily. I wasn't good at it. I'd forget, skip days, get frustrated. But every time I completed 5 days in a row, I'd reward myself with something simple: A walk in the park, a favorite coffee, a moment of quiet pride. And those little celebrations turned the habit from a chore into a joy. So here's your seventh and final practice, the victory log. At the end of each day, write down 3 wins. They don't have to be big. In fact, the smaller, the better. Did you make your bed? Big win. Did you send that one email you were avoiding? Win. Did you choose a salad over fast food? Huge win. Over time, those wins stack. They create a new self-image. You stop seeing yourself as someone who's trying to change and start seeing yourself as someone who follows through. Now, let's bring it all together. You've just absorbed 7 powerful principles, 7 daily actions that, if practiced consistently, will reshape your future. But I don't want this to be just another video you listen to and forget. I want this to be your turning point, so here's your challenge, the 30-day daily action challenge. For the next 30 days, commit to these 7 actions. Don't worry about doing them perfectly. Focus on doing them consistently. 1. Your 15-minute daily win. 2. The 5-minute now list. 3. Your 3-level goal map. 4. The ownership journal. 5. The 7x7 learning challenge. 6. The circle audit upgrade. 7. The victory log. Print them out, write them down, stick them on your mirror. Do whatever it takes to keep them in sight. Because when you show up for yourself daily, your life changes quietly, and then all at once. And remember this, success is not something you chase, it's something you attract by the person you become, and who you become is built in the daily. If you found value in this message, let it live beyond you. Like the video, share it with someone who needs it. Leave a comment about which of these practices you're starting today. You never know who's waiting for your story to give them permission to change theirs. You've got this, let the action begin.